short segment, and we're going into a longer segment here, about 40 minutes more. You're listening to Strange Reality, Dave Emmons, and my guest, as I announced before, is Robert Kiviat, and he's had a lot of experiences. And now maybe we can go through some of those questions I was running through real quick. And it's the 2012 reset we just talked about, and about the Mayan. It wasn't the end of the world; it was a reset. And what does that mean to you, Robert? A reset in 2012? What
Well,
happened?
yeah, as you were saying, I think you're right. A lot of people have misinterpreted the Mayan predictions to be all, brimstone and the end of the world. And in reality, most people are saying that they were predicting a change in our society, a reset, back to a different kind of, I guess, world and priorities and those type of things. So at the same time that those people were claiming an end of the world was going to happen around 2012, that's about the same time the Mandela effect came into prominence. And that time period coincided also with the particle collider in CERN powering up. So maybe the Mayans years ago saw some kind of future where the world was going to shift into a different thinking and a different reality, maybe. And maybe that reality is now what we're seeing. And Mandela effects are the evidence that something changed in our reality. And the only thing we're seeing so far are the Mandela effects, which are history being edited apparently by some mysterious force. But maybe it's a lot deeper than that. We just haven't seen those effects yet. They
Right.
might be there, but just not been uncovered yet.
How would the individual feel? Would they feel this reset? Are we feeling different? A lot of people are saying they're noticing a difference in the world. They're noticing a difference in people. Now, are we starting to feel that physiologically?
I'm one of them, and I've done many, as you were indicating earlier, I've done many network broadcast and other, type of television documentaries and film documentaries that look into the great mysteries of our world that people care about. This particular one is really, really important because if the world is changing in little things like celebrities' names, TV shows, movie scenes, things of that nature, these cultural icons, cultural touchstones, then maybe there are things happening at the lower level of not our awareness that are actually our world's different. Maybe one day we're going to come home and your wife is not Jane, it's Betty. It's not Betty, it's something else. Maybe we don't have 3 kids, we have 2 kids now. What? So there are a lot of people that have come out in the last few years saying our reality has been shifted to the point where I don't recognize my husband. He looks the same, he appears to be the same, but he's different. He's not the same person. And there are many people saying that as they look into the political debates going on, even tonight. So I think what's happening is we're looking at a major shift in our world. Something's happened.
Yeah,
I believe
Robert,
that.
you have a synopsis here, and I'll read it. Millions claim movies are different, and TV show titles, celebrities, names, logos, and brands, other cultural tombstones, and even the Bible are not what they once were. Is the supernatural force editing history? Now, the Bible, getting into the Bible, that's going to, a lot of people, they just understand the Bible, period, and they don't want to change it. Robert, is there any changes to what the Bible means to us today as it did 2,000 years ago?
If ever there was a moment in the Mandela effect research that kind of knocked me to the floor, and I was raised Jewish. I've also studied the Old Testament and New Testament together. I've done TV shows involving the Bible for Fox Network. We did Miracles and Visions, Fact or Fiction, hosted by Roma Downey. We had Prophecies of the Millennium, hosted by Edward James Olmos, the famous Latin actor. We were looking at the Bible very carefully, and I can say this with no equivocation. The Lord's Prayer in the book of Matthew, which is Jesus telling the disciples how you should pray. Jesus literally telling people, this is the way you should pray. And I'll do it for you right now. The Lord's Prayer, and I'm a Jew, okay? Our Father in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread and forgive our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass upon us. And Jesus then follows it up in a few sentences later by saying, because if you forgive your fellow man, essentially, for their trespasses, God will forgive you for your trespasses. Now in the Bible, according to almost everyone you talk to, the term is not for if you forgive others for those trespasses, God will forgive you for yours. It's now if you forgive others their debts like money debts,
Right.
God will forgive you for your debts. What? When did God care about money? When was money the thing? Now, look, there are many people who have come out and go, well, Bible could have just been interpreting the word debt being your debt to your fellow man. No. The word debt is in the Bible many times as money. Okay? We know money versus trespasses being someone offending you. A debt is not an offense. A debt is it's a debt. It's a debt. So the idea is, how could the word debts get in there? It's unbelievable. I have a little Bible, actually, someone gave me a while back.
Yeah.
And I ran to the Bible right away in the research of this show, and I read it, and I could not believe it. I had to carry it around to people and show people, and they scratched their head like you'd never seen.
Yeah.
That's just one. There are several biblical, but that's the biggest one, because how often is Jesus quoted that way? Rarely.
Right. I heard a story that it was all about the money from the high priest that were actually against Jesus, because Jesus was pulling people away from the temple, and he's telling them not to give the high priest money, because they were just spending it foolishly, and they're getting involved in riches and all
Right.
stuff. And they were mad at Jesus because of the money. Is that
right? So in other words, the word debts was there forever, right?
Right.
Wrong. Here's a problem. One of the oldest movies, and a good movie too, like in the same era of the, Ten Commandments, when that came out with Charlton Heston. There's a movie about Jesus. And in the movie, they portray the scene, and it's trespasses.
Yeah.
And there's people on YouTube by the millions pointing to this issue, that if you believe the word death was there forever, there's a famous movie. It's one of the most famous movies, theatrical movies ever portraying Jesus. And you can find it. I don't want to give it today, but I'll let you know after. And literally, the scene is so obviously trespasses in the scene. You watch the way the scene is, and back in the Bible days, if the word was debts, it would have been just scandalous.
Right.
Scandalous.
Now, you talk about the history has been edited. And a lot of times I'm hearing a lot of people say history is not what we think it is. We've been fooled. We've been told lies all the way through. I think they call it the high priest, the big rich people, the billionaires, and the leaders of like the kings and I guess people that are the elites. They have been telling us lies and keeping the truth away from us. Is that part of the Mandela effect, Robert?
Wow, that's such a great question, because my next movie, or maybe one of the next movies, if not the next movie we'll do, hopefully with Uncorked, is going to look into the very serious implications that our world is being controlled by a cabal. And that cabal is above governments. It's above everything. In fact, it's really what Stanley Kubrick referenced in the movie Eyes Wide Shut, where Eyes Wide Shut presents the idea that we're being controlled by a sinister, overarching, powerful, monetarily unequaled group of people that want to bring Luciferian, demonic, bad stuff into our culture for reasons of their own, and has been going on for 20, 30, 40, 50, maybe hundreds of years. And it has the term the Illuminati. And the idea that the Illuminati, some secret cabal of rich bankers and whatever, could be involved in sex trafficking, could be involved in all kinds of terrible things in our society, and may even be in control of CERN, and could be using the CERN particle collider in Switzerland to screw around with reality, and maybe even cause many millions, if not billions of people to lose their minds a little bit. That's a possibility. And then the question is, could scientific experiments cause this editing? Many people think yes. Many people think that that's what the quantum computer was invented for. And that's what CERN was more or less really devised to do.
Mhm.
punch holes through our present reality, bring other information from a different dimension into ours. And if you believe quantum physics, like I think I do, that it's a very real thing, quantum physics has proven that you literally don't see something become a reality until you focus on it. So maybe we're looking at we're mass of people creating this with the help of the CERN particle collider and not even know it. Because
Yeah,
if you can actually change protons and neutrons and change what's in this present reality, people think you could change reality itself.
right.
Best example was before he died. Um, God, his name for a minute. Stephen Hawking. Stephen
Hmm.
Hawking said, without a doubt, when we start smashing particles, at high speed at CERN, we could destroy our universe. Now, maybe we didn't destroy our universe with a black hole because they're trying to recreate the Big Bang, but maybe they created little portal problems and letting little bits of other reality come in here, and that's what's causing the editing. That's the
That's what I heard. There's rumors about the black hole and about they found a ghost, I guess, in the system here a while back. And I wanted to ask you about the Pope, what he said and what his commission said. They said that we're going to be seeing a lot of supernatural things now. Things are going to come forward, and there's things going on that we'll see, and they'll be supernatural. And they said, don't be afraid of them. Don't be worried about it. What do you know about that one, Robert? About
Well,
the
we came across that information. We also saw the belief lately, the Pope and the other Pope before him, and even their science division were having UFO conferences, believing UFOs could be here and coming in. And then we start looking at the early research when CERN was starting to become devised by the scientists. They were talking about one benefit could be looking into the UFO mystery because UFOs supposedly come from another dimension potentially. And the way you could prove the dimensions are real interdimensionally, why don't you prove, first of all, that there are other dimensions and prove it with a particle collider? So the idea is that what the popes and the Vatican have been trying to say for about 20 years now in my research is that expect phenomena. Expect phenomenon like the Mandela effect.
Mhm.
Expect to see things like that. But then it gets really scary because some of my other TV shows on the Fox network, especially prophecies of the millennium, predicted that we may see signs and even miracles and visions hosted by Ramadani. You'll see signs, and the signs will be of the end of the world coming or a nuclear conflagration. And then you hear Putin talking about he's open to nuclear war. I'm a little worried right now. You know what I mean? I'm a little
Yeah,
concerned.
me too. I mean, the world situation, you're talking about that they used the do weapon, and some people say, well, that was probably used somewhere else. I'm not going to say names because I don't have proof on that, but
Which weapon is it? What is it called? The weapon?
do weapon, direct energy weapon.
Ah,
It was used a few times, and I think it's part of the new world order that a lot of these big shots want to get rid of most of the population, maybe two-thirds of it.
I
And
guess you know about the stones, right? The stones that were destroyed. It's unbelievable what happened there.
no,
There,
no, I
there,
didn't.
what were the stones called again? The stones themselves. They were stones that were basically memorializing for many, many years that the world eventually would be, shortened in the population to a significant degree. And
Mhm.
it's allegedly coming. And I don't want to scare anybody, but all these things seem to point to something phenomenal.
Oh, you're talking about the Georgia Stones.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, there. That's it. I wanted to ask you also a question. In some of the notes, I took some notes here to take a look at things.
Thank
Uh,
you.
Obama went to Stonehenge, and you said that he loves megalithic structures and stones like that. What's his thought on this? Do you know anything about that, Robert?
I don't know so much about his belief that the megalithic structures at Stonehenge or other potential megalithic structures are a focus of him particularly. But when you see the kind of things he's done since he's left the presidency, and you see that he's interested in how our world may deal with the future. A recent movie came out, I'm not going to plug it, but anybody can go find out the movie that him and his wife, Michelle, more or less produced. And it created quite a scene because what that movie presents is that eventually in the future, some enemy of ours is going to use some really high-tech way to screw up our entire electrical grid, our internet, you name it, cause us all to kind of go crazy, even make electric cars go insane, and it's going to cause a civil war in our own country, and maybe worse than a civil war. So that's a very strange thing for a former president to be making a movie about.
Right.
Why is he so sure that that's something we should be watching? Why is that good entertainment from a former president? And I think Obama has shown an interest in phenomena. All you have to do is look at who he had as his chief of staff, or better yet, I don't know if exactly chief of staff, but definitely helped him in the White House, John Podesta, who is a huge UFO buff, who seems to believe everything UFO related, who's also been tied to some demonic cooking episodes. Are you aware of that?
Right. Yeah. Hollywood is involved in a lot of demonic devil worshiping
Yeah.
that I can see or what I've been hearing about. And that's the center of a lot of this stuff. You talk about Obama. He's got this studio. He's also going to make a remake of the Betty and Barney Hill story.
Very true. Very
Yeah.
interesting.
And
Yes.
yeah, and I'm
Yes.
wondering why he's doing that. I mean, just like you said, he had a staff member that was a UFO freak, and so am I guess. I wrote several books on the
I know
idea.
you. I know you have.
I'm an abductee and a contactee.
I know your background. Yes, and I
Yeah,
respect that. Yes, I
yeah.
know.
So I know this, and a preacher can't get up on a podium and tell me that UFOs are just plain evil. No, they're not. They're all different kinds of species out there, 82 or even more in our universe, and a lot of them are human like us, and they walk amongst us. Could you elaborate on that, Robert, with Dr. David Jacobs has said and other
Yeah,
people?
I interviewed. Ironically, I interviewed David Jacobs. I have to be one of the earliest young producers in television to ever interview David Jacobs about his alien
I've
abduction
seen.
and
Yeah.
history. Interesting connection. David
Mhm.
Jacobs in his home was when I interviewed him. He had one wall all history books, the other wall all UFO books, and they met, in the corner. You know what I mean? And I
Mhm.
really enjoyed meeting David. And I was following up research at that time on people that claim to have real serious evidence of alien abductions. I don't know where David went with his research after that. I know he's a big proponent of like Bud Hopkins was and John Mack before he died. But I'm going to be honest with you, of all the mysteries of the unknown that I have covered, the hardest has been the alien abduction aspect of the UFO field. I want you to know that. And I do believe theories that you're dealing with an interdimensional reality with alien abductions, I believe it's becoming more and more clear that I think you could be looking at something along the lines of the Mandela effect, where there are other dimensions. The beings come in, they deal with us in another dimension. I know you're an abduction advocate and an experiencer, right? And a
I
researcher. So I'll tell you a little story that happened to me a few years ago. My ex-girlfriend was literally helping me with the show Aliens on the Moon, The Truth Exposed. She was exposed to a lot of mystery of the UFO field, and she met Buzz Aldrin. She watched the interview about his belief in UFOs and possibly other intelligences coming to our planet and the moon near Mars called Phobos. So she was affected by this. One night, she woke up in the middle of the night and she actually is facing the other, like almost like in a trance, right? She wakes up and she's staring at the headboard, and she says to me, she called me Bobby. Bobby, who is this? He's wearing a silver outfit. Why is he doing that?
hmm,
And she's like asleep, but she's sitting up in her bed in a way. She's semi-conscious. She believes she was always asleep. She never said, oh, she never said, oh, I remember that. She doesn't remember any of it. But she was telling me that there was a being with her, and she's saying there's something above us. There's something above us. And then she kind of went back down and went back to sleep.
wow.
I
I
can't explain it. And to this day, I don't know what I was witnessing. I don't have an example, but I can tell you that that was the closest I've ever seen to something that is analogous to the alien abduction phenomenon. And the other issue is years ago, I interviewed a woman that said that her Great Danes, she had two, I had Great Danes years ago as a kid, one Great Dane anyway. And these are big dogs, Dave. They're big dogs.
Yeah.
And these dogs were positioned at the bed of this woman. And she's sure she was abducted. She's sure she was taken out of the house. She saw herself leaving the house, saw herself being brought back to the house through a window. Yeah, that's right. Almost like mysteriously. And those dogs never moved. Now,
Right.
she understands what that means. It looks like she imagined it, but she didn't imagine it.
Yeah.
So it's almost like on a dimensional level in my mind.
They were dumbed down. And add a note onto that they're walking amongst us, these humanoid aliens. Harvard had a study, and they actually come out and said that they believe they are walking amongst us. They're in human form. They're in government. They're unelected officials, and they're kind of pulling the puppet strings.
Harvard came out. Dave,
Yes.
you got to get that evidence to me. I got to read that.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Harvard come out with a study, and they talked about that they are walking amongst us, and they said I think they give it a number about 140,000 of them around the globe.
So Harvard, the institution, has
Yeah.
backed this?
Yes. Yes.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Considering how they raked John Mack over the coals before he was tragically killed.
Right. Yeah. But he was one of the first, I guess, academics.
Yeah. He took a beating.
Yeah.
He really did.
Yeah. Now getting back, I'll look that up and I'll send it to you.
Yeah, I'd love to see that. Really, please give that to Judy or to the people here, please.
Yeah, I'll do that. It's a fascinating study. Fox actually covered it. Fox News, and
I'm not surprised.
yeah. So it's actually front page news from what Harvard did. But
when was that, by the way? When do you remember seeing that come out?
Last week.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a funny feeling. I could be wrong. I think Avi Loeb might be involved in that. I'm just going to guess.
Yes, I think I saw his name in the credits of some of this stuff.
And I know you have a very personal connection to the UFO and abduction story in general, right?
Mhm.
So I want to caution you that Avi Loeb is already getting major criticisms from the academic world because he's pursuing money so much.
Oh.
And you got to be aware. And I'm not going to say anything negative about Avi, but there's a group of people that have actually foisted the biggest scam on America. And that started with the New York Times back in 2017 on the Black Aura article. And that is the worst piece of journalism probably ever created by any major newspaper in the world. And I believe this. And I believe you will see in journalism classes, you will see people teaching the errors made by the New York Times in that article, because UFOs are not understood by most journalists. And anybody can come along like a fake government UFO runner of a division named Lou Elizondo, who never ran any kind of program like that, but the New York Times printed it, and CNN ran with it, and Fox News ran with it, and a plethora of other people ran with it, to the point of 6 years of 2 videos that may or may not show something unknown in a military test range. You got to be kidding me. Compared to the UFO mystery, that's a bunch of bunk. That's just ridiculous.
How about Dr. Gary Nolan? What do you know about him? He backs the story.
Gary is going to find himself probably censured by Stanford eventually, and probably brought up, if not legally brought up on charges, disgraced in the academic community. Here's a guy who literally runs around with a former head of the CIA, CIA guy, not head of the CIA, a former CIA officer who runs around with this guy, who literally tells people with this CIA guy, former CIA guy, right with him, saying, "I tell you what, you're an alien abduction victim. You saw a UFO. Your DNA might be affected. We, for a few $1 million, can get that DNA back on track, get rid of the negative forces from the aliens." Sounds a hell of a lot like Scientology to me. And sure enough, these individuals, I don't know about Nolan, but the people around Gary Nolan have been former Scientologists or are present Scientologists. That sounds like thetas. That sounds like Scientology. And I think the world has been so disrespected by these characters who use the New York Times to foist this stuff on a believing public, because most of us expect, from my work and other people's work, we know there's a UFO mystery. We know it's huge. But just like the Mandela effect, you have to do your research. You have to know what you're doing. You can't just, it's very disingenuous to tell people you believe something when you have no evidence of it. So with the Mandela Effect phenomenon, and like I've covered UFOs, I only look at the evidence that is truly germane. You can show it in a courtroom. You know its provenance. You know its general makeup. Not a bunch of mysterious images that came out of some guy's paper bag.
Yeah.
There's a guy, there's a guy out there named, I have to say it, Christopher Mellon,
Right.
who delivered these videos in the Pentagon parking lot in a paper bag. And he does brag about that. The
All right.
provenance
Yeah.
is a paper bag delivery in the Pentagon parking lot.
Yeah. What do you think about these guys that got this disclosure group going? Louis Alessandro.
That's what I'm telling you. It's a complete scam on America. And we're going to be doing a documentary probably in 2025 that's going to expose all this fraud so that we can get, and all the wasted congressional time and energy. There are so many great cases of UFOs to look at and show the public that are in the government vault that we can look at. And I've shown some on television involving Area 51, involving other areas. So all I'm going to say is we're going to do our job and clean up that complete travesty that you've been talking about. Lou Elizondo is a fraud.
Right.
Come talk to me anytime he wants.
Right.
Anytime.
And my experience is a lot of people, they don't want to listen to those, just like you said. And I think, here's my theory, Robert, that they had these hearings, these Senate hearings canceled twice by the Pentagon. They said Pentagon, but I think there's higher ups that are they're stopping this disclosure totally. I think
I have to be honest with you. The odds are that if there is a cabal that's happy that the UFO field is getting kind of like this evidence, they're happy because it's all baloney. And they would let these people run with this stuff because there's nothing there. There's no there. None. These people are pointing to things like the alien autopsy film I showed years ago, or other things as tangible, maybe evidence. But in reality, they're just making up stories that have been repeated. And the government has come out and said that. The guy who ran Arrow, Sean Kirkpatrick, Arrow was the government body to look into these claims. He's gone out and said publicly in the last couple of months, it's all BS. There's no proof. These people offered nothing. And every time someone like David Grush was asked to present his evidence, he wouldn't. He has none.
Yeah.
Of course he doesn't have any.
Yeah. And let's merge these ideas, Mandela Effect and the UFOs. I've been seeing a lot. There's a lot of people have these cameras now. They get videotape of all these UFOs, and there's been more and more of them here lately. How can you connect the Mandela Effect with extraterrestrials, Robert?
What a great question. It is directly connected. What happened with me was when I was kind of leading the UFO reporting for Fox Network, NBC, whatever, and all that stuff throughout the last few decades, I noticed that CERN, like I said a little earlier, CERN had as one of their kind of like goals, scientific stated goals, to look into interdimensional possibilities because allegedly some scientific papers had indicated the UFO phenomenon could originate in other dimensions. So if they were able to punch a hole through this dimension and pull something in from another dimension or along those lines, that would give credence to the idea UFOs are coming and going interdimensionally, and that's why they look so odd coming and going sometimes. I just saw a recent video someone sent me, shot from a plane, that looks to me like it could be something entering from another dimension. And there are several different examples. I witnessed something of my own when my own 5-year-old son and I were out in the backyard in the Hollywood Hills one day, and we had a beautiful view of the mountains, of Malibu's in the distance, and we witnessed what appeared to be these huge giant rectangles forming out of nowhere. Now, wait, it gets better. I didn't have a camera. My young boy was 5. He just goes, "Dad, is that aliens?" He didn't know what to make of it. Those yellow rectangles, I had no way of proving it to anybody. And sure enough, I found a video. We're going to show an upcoming one of my movies. We're going to show this footage shot literally near, I think, Kazakhstan.
Yeah,
And it literally shows these yellow rectangles forming almost identically to what me and my son witnessed. Thank God I got the video. Thank God I have it recorded, and I'll be showing it to the public in the next couple of years, easily, maybe next year.
yeah, right. We have a thin veil between us and the next dimension, and a lot of times there's a crossover, and we don't know the difference between ghosts, spirits, angels,
All of
ET,
it. Yep.
older guys. We don't know the difference between them. They all come. They're all extraterrestrial. They all come from another dimension into ours.
Right.
Uh, Let me get back into some of the things that I saw in the notes. The John F. Kennedy assassination. Now, what was that all about? There's
This, Dave, this is a crazy one. This is as crazy as it gets. As you mentioned, I did a documentary. It's just, I think when they mention my credits, they always start with the most recent year or something. But I did a big documentary called I Shot JFK, The Shocking Truth.
I saw that.
I did it for and with a great researcher who really is a really great researcher about the JFK assassination. He's devoted his entire major life to this. And he gave me access to an interview with a guy named James Files, who claims that he was shooting from the grassy knoll and shot the headshot that killed Kennedy, the main shot that blew his, brains out and everything. And literally, we know that car had 6 people in it. We know it was Kennedy, Jackie Kennedy in the back. We know it was the Governor Connolly and his wife in the middle part of the car. And then in the front, we have the driver, and then a CIA or probably a Secret Service guy in the front seat. Okay, that's 6 people in the car. Apparently, the Mandela effect affected people affected by the phenomenon claim where they come from, their timeline, there were only 4 people in the car, just 4. Now, I studied that film. I analyzed the guy's claim from jail, James Files, who says in the interview I inherited kind of that or I used that is, I was shooting from the grassy knoll and I shot. I had to wait for Connolly to get out. Now, according to him, he sure described 6 people in the car. Now, there's millions of people since the Mandela effect became very well known that are claiming their memory is only 4 people were in that car that day. There weren't 6 people. How they explain the conspiracy theories about the bullet going through Connolly and unhitting Kennedy, all I know is they're adamant. And one of those people is our journalist in our movie. He would never make that mistake. He's a journalist. He studied the Zabruta film like all of us. Yeah. And he's adamant. And what's even weirder, one of the investors in our movie, and we have some investors, one of them, his stepfather was one of the doctors in the JFK autopsy holding the head of Kennedy. And he believes his memory also was, he wasn't out there that day, he was only working on Kennedy's body, but he remembers being 4 people too. Mm-hmm. So it's unbelievable. It's almost like there's another dimension where 4 people were in the car. Now, wait a minute. There's residual evidence of this. In this timeline where we live right now, you can go to museums that memorialize the JFK assassination. And one particular one, whether it's a real museum or was just a memorialization of the Kennedy assassination, has a car with 4 people in it. Yeah. 4 people are in it. Why would be the driver? Why?
Plus the driver.
4 people total.
Really?
And that's, get this one, the big murals of the assassination event, they're on the wall. Mm-hmm. So it's like they put together a car. It doesn't match the photos. It's just the strangest thing you've ever seen.
Okay, who controls this Mandela effect? Who controls I guess the resets and everything that goes on in this world? And the Tartarians. I wanted to ask you about that too.
Wait a minute.
They come and go too. Robert,
the Tartarians.
You got a lot to unpack on this one, okay?
Let's start when you're talking to someone who can blend the UFO and Mandela effect easily, because I told you, I think UFOs likely are coming from another dimension, probably not coming from a, light speed from God knows where. They're probably coming from bending space-time and all that. I think that's pretty clear. Now, back to the issue about what did you say before the Tartarians? You said
Tartarians, yeah. They come and go. They build these big masterpieces and they tear them down within a year or so, and they're gone. And nobody knows who does that architecture, who they are. Is this part of the reset? And I wanted to ask you, who is controlling
that? That was it. So the idea is whether it's a simulation whether it's some other benevolent or malevolent force, benevolent probably, trying to screw around editing our history. Everybody wants to know that. All the scientists that are like saying we live in a simulation, they want to know who's outside the simulation, who's that, what's out there, right? We all want to know that. I think it's really up for grabs. It could be, as our expert Jacob Israel says in our movie, it could be demons, it could be angels, it could be aliens, it could be the simulation, it could be people from the future. We don't know, but we know one thing: the changes are happening, and they're continuing to happening, and they're leaving residual evidence that we can see something's happening. So who's ever in charge of this whole effect thing, they want us to know about it. Apparently, it's not like they want it to be a secret. They want us to know.
Yeah, Robert, we talked about Jesus earlier. Now, could God, I call him the creator and the source because he's big, it's bigger than God. We try to label him. Do you think that the creator is in charge of all this reset and this Mandela effect on us?
It's a tough one. I do a lot of prayer about this myself. I think it would be equally possible and likely that God is allowing this to happen, being perpetrated by, let's say, the evil one, because he wants to see how we will handle it. And it's part of our growth as a race. And it's allowed to happen, even though I guess God could end it from happening. I think a lot of things we study in our spiritual, doctrines is God will allow evil forces to do their thing, but there's a good that comes out of that, and I hope there's a good coming out of this.
Right. I wanted I want to go also. They talk about the Columbia 7 shuttle people that were killed back in the early 80s, and they talk about John F. Kennedy being alive. They talk about the princess being alive, Diana being alive, and they created a death scene and then they put them somewhere else. Is that part of the Mandela effect also?
No, no. I think what you're talking about is something that kind of merged in with the Mandela effect timing. And that kind of went the direction of people who believe in the flat earth, and they believe that there were things that maybe our government was hiding about the planet itself,
Mm-hmm.
and the earth is not really a disk or a sphere. And a lot of that same time, people were coming out with this whole QAnon thing where QAnon was involving real JFK Jr. and JFK Jr. didn't die in that plane crash years ago with his wife and the wife's sister, but is alive today and is helping Trump and all. That's the same kind of mumbo jumbo that I jumped into my career with years ago and said, we got to get rid of things that are not provable or not based in reality. So when really amazing phenomenon like the Mandela effect happen, we'll be able to really look at it honestly and openly and not be kind of like bamboozled. And so I think that's part of really my motivation. No, I don't believe that's anything like the Mandela effect you're describing at all. No.
Well, the Tower of Babel, the people couldn't understand each other, and there was a lot of
That's interesting, right? See,
yeah, and today we have misinformation and disinformation, and we can't understand each other. Robert, what do
that
you
may
think?
be. That's very astute of you, and I'm leaning with you. That when I ironically, I just reread my Bible about the Tower of Babel because of what you just said. What a great analogy it would be in our modern world if we started disagreeing about major historical truth of our world. What an amazing analogy it would be to not understanding each other. You mean to say that you're not this and this is, and you have proof of it?
Right.
I think people would become even more disenchanted with each other and maybe even spread out, just like what happened with the Tower of Babel. Everybody just spread out because they couldn't understand each other anymore.
Come to think about it, the older I get, this ET phenomenon has been following me for all my life. I had a dream this morning, a vivid dream, Robert, and it was about there was a cylinder and it was on a white platform, and there was a little gray leading me up to the cylinder, and it wanted me to grab the cylinder. But when I got close to the cylinder, I felt the energy and it was actually shaking me, and I was afraid of it. And then I screamed out in my sleep. I said, "No, no, no!" And my wife woke me up. She said, "What'd you dream about?" I said, "An ET." I don't know, So I still have those dreams. What do you think about lucid dreams? Are they part of the Mandela effect? Or are we being messed with consciously or something?
Well, I think I mentioned earlier about the lucid dream that my ex-girlfriend had, and she
Right.
had a lucid dream of what appeared to be an alien encounter aboard a ship, and described the ship above her, described the suit the being was wearing, asking me who is this in a sort of dream state, but awake kind of.
Mhm.
I don't know. To me, it freaked me out, and I asked her about it for a long time, and she looked at me like she barely remembered it.
Yeah. Well, I know there's some special groups. I'm a TI, targeted individual. You might even be too. And I've been tailed or, they tracked me a few times. I saw a truck follow me the last 2, 3 months.
Really?
And they've been watching. Yeah. And I guess I'm talking about all the wrong things and talking to the right people, probably. But I know that there's things going on. And I think our scientists in our MIT, our military industrial complex, MIC, they they have back engineered ET stuff already, and they know how to abduct people. They know how to read your mind. They know how to control your subconscious. Do
Mhm.
you think us humans have that ability to do our own Mandela effect on people?
No, I don't think that we're able to alter physical reality or even like names and things like that of people the way that we're seeing. I don't believe that. I think this would have to be done in some quantum physical actual effect to the
Mhm.
physical world, and that would change the things we're talking about. But I don't think people can do that. No, I don't.
You don't think we can be controlled subconsciously from our
Oh,
own?
we could be controlled subconsciously, but I don't believe any human being has proven they can do it to other people. And that's another grifting of I think, our world. The same scientists that kind of grifted the government the last couple of years with these claims of alien evidence and stuff that's being hidden. These are the same people that made psychic power sound like it was proven in the lab and had millions of dollars invested in it, and it proved absolutely zero. No proof at all. And Gary Nolan, by the way, is involved in that kind of tomfoolery and that BS. And that's the same kind of tomfoolery that I think we have to be aware of right now.
Yeah, I know Uri Geller, and we write back and forth, and he was back in the early '70s, and he did this remote viewing, and he worked with these special.
That's what I'm talking about. Exert very much not Uri. Uri Geller, who I met with, had dinner with at his house and everything. I think Uri believes he has the ability he said he has.
Yeah.
I think he believes that. And has proven some interesting things. And we won't talk about right now, but I think overall others have usurped and manipulated people like Uri Geller to pad their pockets with money. And that's an important thing. Great book written years ago. Pulitzer Prize winning writer, Tim Weiner. Book is called Blank Check. You got to read it. It's a precursor to the big documentary I'm going to do about what happened with the UFO field the last 6 years. The same people focused on Blank Check, stealing money from the government,
Right.
making up proof about psychic power. The same people are involved in the UFO stuff we were talking about with Tom DeLonge, Lou Elizondo, blah, blah, blah. Same guy, Hal Puthoff. Same guy, same guy. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I watched I watched these TV shows on UFOs, but I'm way beyond that. Watching horror.
Good. I know you are. You're
I
you're 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 in another world.
Yeah, no, I am in another world, and I really appreciate. I think we need to be closing out because we're coming up
Right, we're done.
war. So, uh, Robert Kiviat, could you tell us a little bit about what's going on in your near future? I know with this Mandela Effect phenomena, documentary movie coming out soon. Tell us what's going on there, and then we'll close it out.
Sure. This movie comes out July 9th, available on digital, on demand, everywhere where you have your usual place you like to buy your movies and pay your $3.99, $12.99 to rent it or buy it. My next movie that we're in production on right now takes a very interesting look at something called K-pop and the K-pop girls out there that are bringing a version of music to America that is really fresh. It's nothing like the rappers doing Illuminati symbols and stuff like that. Ironically, After that, we're going to do what we think is a deep dive into what Kubrick was saying about Eyes Wide Open, that we have some sort of demonic presence involved in music, involved in our arts. And we're calling that Kubrick's Eyes Wide Open because he said eyes wide closed, ours eyes wide open. And we're going to look very carefully at what Kubrick posited as a warning to the world and how it seems like it's coming true. We're going to be looking at people like Jay-Z, Beyonce, you name it, who literally are doing demonic symbolism everywhere. Why are they doing this? It's a great movie coming out.
Yeah, I want to thank you very much, Robert Kiviat. I know we had a little timing difference, but I just hope
My pleasure.
we can mend this together and we can put this out. And I'd like to have a copy of this because I really enjoyed. I've known you from the past. Your face is very familiar.
Good.
Fiction, yes. And when I saw your picture, I said, I know him.
That's great.
You're a journalist. I went to school for journalism, but I never got into it like you did.
Oh, well, it's a tough axe to grind, but we do it.
That's just, you're doing a great job.
Thanks a lot.
Keep up with
Thanks,
the good
Dave.
enlightenment of people and the truth. And
Thank you.
you've been listening to Robert Kiviat and the Mandela Effect Phenomenon. This is Dave Emmons with the Strange Reality. Good night, everybody.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks for watching.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Dave. Bye-bye.